Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us with this, with our Thursday writing workshop. If you were here last week, you might be happy to know that this is now going to be a weekly feature for our Just One Dime members. I will give everybody like 30 seconds or so to sign in. I want to see who's here. Hello, hello, hello. Amanda, good morning. Good morning. What time is it there, Amanda? Did you have to wake up super early to get here? Susan Akbar, good afternoon. Busy Bee, good afternoon. Hi, Clara. Hey, PJ. Yeah, so there was such a great response to this last week that we decided that this should be a weekly feature. And you might have realized from last week that there's so many more things that we could talk about. Oh, Amanda, 6:30 a.m. That's pretty early, but you're right. It's not terrible. I'm glad it's not like 4 o'clock in the morning. But I do appreciate you waking up to join us live. There are so many things that we could talk about with regard to writing that will help your Amazon business. So I think doing this as a weekly feature is probably a good idea. So as we go forward, if there are things that you are curious about with regard to writing and your business, go ahead and send me a message. I'm trying to think, how do you contact me? You can send me, like a private message through Facebook, through our Facebook group, or in some other way, kind of flag me and say, hey, what about this? And I will try to work everything in. So last week we talked about writing listings and bullet points. And so today's topic is going to be the product description. So we're kind of piggybacking on that and continuing the lesson. I just want to share one little grammar point. I think that's probably the best way to deal with grammar is I'm going to throw out some random grammar points at the beginning of each session because let's face it, grammar is boring. I understand that. And I find that the best way to learn grammar is to experience it. And so if you did not grow up in an English-speaking household or an English-speaking country, your language development and your development of English grammar did not come along together. So it's something that you're adding on after. And that actually counts for people who did grow up in an English-speaking country. And even if your family spoke English, not a lot of people, I should say that the other way around, some people just don't speak with perfect English grammar, and that's okay. And when you look at, say, America, and you look at different regions of the country, we tend to use sort of localized grammar rules in our speaking. For instance, if you've ever spoken to somebody from the southeastern section of the United States, hold on, I need to close this, I'm sorry. I can't have that popping up at me. If you've ever spoken to somebody from the southeastern part of the United States, you will find they use a word, a contraction, y'all. That does not really fall into proper English grammar. It's not something that you would write in American English, but it is part of the local jargon or vernacular or colloquial. And so that is part of spoken language. If you grew up in a family that spoke that type of local colloquial spoken language, then your grasp of actual written grammar might not be that good because they're different. I actually grew up in an environment that was perfect for developing English grammar because my family was English speaking and both of my parents were English teachers. So they not only had obviously a pretty good grasp of English grammar, American English grammar, but they passed it on to their children very often at the dinner table. There were conversations where we discussed missing antecedents in our conversation. So I had to learn at a pretty young age, first of all, what that even meant. And secondly, how to do it right, because you would not get to the end of your story at dinner without being interrupted if your grammar was poor. And double negatives was kind of one of the things that popped up pretty frequently. So anyway, so I understand that learning grammar is boring. So we'll just throw a couple little things in here and there, and hopefully you'll pick some things up along the way. So for today's lesson, I ran into this recently, in fact, but I see it all the time. People are very generous and very grateful when you do something for them, right? They say thank you, and so I say thank you when someone does something for me, and sometimes that happens in a chat or a text. So it's written, and I write thank you or thanks, depending upon the situation. And of course, the normal response to that is, you're welcome. A lot of people don't realize that in that context, you're welcome, there is a contraction, because the actual grammatical phrase is, you are welcome. So sometimes people make the mistake when they write you're welcome, as they use the your as in the possessive pronoun your, Y-O-U-R, instead of using the contraction, meaning you are, your. So loosely translated, the poorly written you're welcome basically is, one, not a complete sentence because it doesn't have a verb in it, and it is giving me the welcome. It's your welcome. Here, you take it. Anyway, a little something to look out for as you're moving around your day in American English. Okay, so let's get on with talking about product descriptions. So last week we talked about the listing titles and the bullet points, and we're going to kind of start in the same place as we did last week. So I want to catch you up in case you weren't here. Basically, when you start this writing task, you want to have a list of keywords for your product, and you want to have your product or a photo of your product. It's great if you have the product itself, because you can turn it around, look at it, and it can be inspiring. And let's face it, by the time you're ready to write your product description, you know that product inside and out because you built it and you're so excited about it. And so you have to sort of translate that excitement to the customer. So I suggest that you start with a list of between 5 and 10 of your top keyword phrases. So in the product title, we used 1 or 2. And then in those bullet points, we used a couple more. So total so far, before we get to the product description, is probably 5-ish. Now, they're not necessarily the top 5, because you'll see when you look at your top keyword phrases that there's a lot of duplication there. And our goal is to use keywords and not duplicate. We have a small amount of space to fit in these keywords, and we still have to use other words to make the whole thing make sense. So what ends up happening is, like last week, we did an example of a travel tea mug, an insulated tea mug. Well, obviously the word tea was in just about every keyword phrase. So there are some ways to kind of mix it up a little so that we're not constantly saying tea this and tea that and tea this and tea that. We kind of put some things together. So instead of using just the top 5 keyword phrases, maybe we used number 1 and maybe we skipped number 2 and went down to number 4. So that's why I suggest that you start with a whole list of about 10, because you're going to want more than just the 5 that you're going to use. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to be limited to 5 keyword phrases. That's not the case at all. There's really no limit other than we want it to make sense. So you can't just have a list of keyword phrases, because it won't make any sense. We have 2 audiences for your listing. One is the Amazon algorithm that's looking for keywords. So we want to feed that as many keywords as we can find as we can fit into it. But the other thing is that you want customers, people, humans, to be able to read your product title and understand quickly what this is. And also, we talked last week about the bullet points being scannable. Again, people are not going to spend a lot of time. So you want them to be able to read them quickly. So you want them to be short. And anytime you shorten your writing, when we're talking about marketing writing, which is what we're doing, anytime you shorten your writing, what you want to do is you want to take out the words that don't mean anything. Take out with and for and the articles. We'll have a whole another show on the articles, trust me. So you want to keep mostly the keywords and cut the fat, as I like to say. All right. So in the product description, first of all, let's go over the Amazon rules. I chatted with Amazon this morning because I just wanted to make sure we had up-to-date information. So your product description is 2,000 up to 2,000 characters. That's a lot of words. That's a lot of space. So I wouldn't really worry about running out of space. If you remember from last week, we were trying to squeeze the title into 50 characters. That was a bit tough. 2,000 words, fine. For the most part, you probably won't use all 2,000, but we'll talk about how long is long enough. And the other thing that Amazon assured me is that the keywords that you use in your product description count. We've had discussions before about, are they only looking at the first 250 characters of that 2,000 characters? And if so, why bother writing the rest of it? Remember when you write your product description that we're serving two audiences here. We are serving Amazon's algorithm, but we are also serving people. You want your customers to get something out of this writing. You want them to get the information that you want them to see. You want them to see what you're highlighting about your product, because this is part of showing them that your product is better than the competitor's product. So when it comes to the product description, we're going to focus a little bit more on the people readers and a little bit less on the Amazon algorithm readers. Obviously, the keywords are going to come up. Like I said in the example from last week, the word tea. There's no way we could describe that product and not use the word tea several times. It'll probably come up in each paragraph, and that'll be good. So the first thing I want to do today, before we actually write anything, is I want to take a look at some samples that I've pulled out that we can assess, because I kind of want to do this a little bit inside out. As you recall, last week's exercise was not so much about writing, as in sentences and paragraphs, as it was about wordsmithing, or taking the words that we need to stick in there and kind of finding a formula and a way to put them together. I don't want to say stick them together, put them together in a way that would work and make sense. So today what I want to do is take a look at some sample product descriptions, first of all. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Just give me a second to make that happen, as I am right now going through my mind and saying, what's on my desktop that I don't want anybody to see? I'm sure nothing. Why would I have anything on my desktop that you shouldn't see? Okay, somebody chat me when you can see my desktop. That would be helpful, please. And I will get started with, oh, Esther, you homeschool your children. Oh, you're like a saint. I always thought, I was a teacher. I taught full-time for a while, and I don't have any children myself. And I was young at the time, and my students would always ask me, don't you have any kids? Are you going to have any kids? And I kind of looked at them and I was like, I have like 30 different kids every hour. Why would I need more than that? Okay, you can see my desktop now. I'm just playing around with my windows to figure out what's happening here. Okay, new window. Perfect. Open my file. Nope, that's not my file. I kind of miss Fred, my co-host from the newbie chat, because somebody could be talking while I'm doing this. All right, example number 1. Please work, please work, please work. Okay. All right, I'm gonna try to show my screen and keep one eye or half an eye on the chat in case somebody is saying, no, no, we can't see a thing. I have no idea what you're talking about. All right, so I just, for today, the product samples that I chose are completely random. So if these products belong to anybody in our group, I have no idea about that. And so they can simply, that person can simply remain anonymous. I started off with a coffee mug. I mean, we always talk about using a sample as a coffee mug. So um, let's take a look at this title before we go on. Somebody give me some feedback on what you think about this product title based on what we talked about last week. Jurgis, I'm glad you were able to join us despite your trip to the vet. Anybody have any feedback on this title based on what we talked about last week? They shouldn't have led with their brand name. Yes, based on what we talked about. Because if you look here, first of all, Cypress Home is clearly their brand name and it shows up there. They took up some prime real estate in their product title with that. And that's probably, unless they're a huge company, and I don't know that for sure, that's probably not going to have great search value. Suggest it's a gift. Yeah, they worked that word in there. You know what? In this case, I might agree with their use of gift simply because they're talking about a gift box, which is part of their product. So if their competitor is offering just the mug without the gift box, this item is giving you an extra element that could be useful. Don't need the dimensions there, correct. I'm guessing if we measured this particular product title, oh, I'm gesturing as if you could see me. I am guessing that if we measured this particular product title, we would find that it's more than 50 characters. Now, we talked about last week how the limit is 50 characters, but it used to be longer, and so the field will actually take more characters, but Amazon is really just focusing on the first 50 characters. Yes, Susan, the dimensions could be a bullet point. All right, so let's move along. Give me a quick reaction to these bullet points, only because they sort of grab my attention. What's missing here? Do you find these bullet points? First of all, I see 4 of them. What do you think about that? Oh, sorry. Yes, I can make it larger. Yes, it seems as though we're missing 1 bullet point. Let me figure out how to, that's fine. That might be, oh, I know, I can make it larger this way. Let's see, that helps. Yes, the bullet points are too long. They're not scannable. Can you look at that in a second or two and tell me what each bullet point is about? You can't. And part of that is because they don't have a call out phrase at the beginning that's in all caps. That was something that we worked on last week. And that kind of focuses your eye and says, okay, that's what that's about. And that's what that's about. And also, yes, there's no feeling in here. These are pretty much just, it's kind of like a list of features and a bunch of other words that really don't have a whole lot of value. All right, I'm scrolling down here to the product description. Look at that product description. I know we haven't talked about it yet. We're about to. Somebody tell me, what do you think about that product description? I see 1 paragraph. It's a bunch of text without even reading it. What do you think about this product description? Yes, Akbar, it is very short. Just looking at it, I'm thinking, boy, they can't have given us too much information about this product. in that one little paragraph. PJ says, I never read something like that. Yes, tell me why, because I think you're right. And I think we all do that. Why do you never read that? Jurgis, yes, it's too short. Parker, no spacing. Absolutely. Um, Sergio, no formatting. Absolutely. It's just blah, blah, blah. It's just a bunch of little text. It doesn't have main points. It runs together. It's not distinct. Exactly. They generally aren't using white space to their advantage. Exactly, Esther, and we're going to get into that. PJ says, because it's too long and I just want the highlights. Exactly. It's not scannable. Now, the product description is kind of interesting because this is the part where if if your customer is going to spend more than 30 seconds on your product listing, like if they see something at the top of the listing that gets their attention, they may in fact scroll to the product description and spend, maybe a minute looking at it, reading it. On this, you're absolutely right. Who said it? PJ. I wouldn't even stop till I would scroll right by that. There's no heading, there's no bullet list, there's no white space, there's no call outs, there's nothing. Exactly. Now, we did talk last time about the fact that when you look at these listings on a mobile device, the elements of the listing are in a different order. We didn't really address that so well, but I want to kind of deal with that today. I still am not really sure why Amazon creates it that way, because the way they create the listing on the website makes a lot of sense. You've got your title, has a few words, it tells you what it is, it grabs you. And you either want this product or you don't. If you think you might want it, then you move down to the bullet points. It also grabs your attention. It gives you a little more information. And again, if you're still interested, then you're going to scroll down and take a look at the product description and maybe spend a little more time reading. And this is the largest field in terms of how many characters you can put. So why, I don't know the thinking in the fact that if you look at this listing on a mobile device, the product description comes first. And then, well, obviously the product title comes first, but the product description comes above and the bullet points come later. I don't really have a good answer for that. However, since we know that that happens, it just furthers our cause for writing a really eye-catching product description. So the product description is not just about the information that you put in there, but again, just like anything that we see on the internet, there's a visual component. So you want to make it visually attractive so that it pulls people in. And when they just see a whole bunch of plain text, boy, I really wish you guys could see my gestures right now. I'm gesturing to myself. When you just see a whole bunch of plain text, yeah, you kind of think blah, 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 blah. All right, I'm going to grab a couple questions. Shouldn't the description help to negate any of the negatives? Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth in a minute, PJ, about what information we want to put in the product description. Hold that thought and bring it back to us. How effective is it to have some pictures along with the descriptions? It would be great to add photos or video to your product description. However, you must be brand registered with Amazon in order to have access to that feature. So I'm not going to deal with that concept here. We are going to work strictly on using the text. Oh, and somebody remind me, we're going to talk about the text editor and a little bit of HTML to make things look a little bit better a little later on. PJ, I want to see all the specifics in a list form in the description, like the size of the mug that is in the title. Exactly. Exactly. Let's look at another sample or two before we make up our minds here. All right, another coffee mug. Oh, I sense a theme here. Yeah, look at this product title. I think that, well, I was going to say I think it's great. It's not great. It's better than the other one because it's shorter. I don't see a lot of keywords here. Maybe jumbo mugs is a keyword. I'm not sure. Other than that, there's not a ton of information there. We look at the bullet points. Again, at least here they have all five, but they don't grab us with an introductory phrase. They do have the measurements. Okay, that's great. Just scanning a couple of the words here. Made of beautiful white porcelain. The comfortable handle and perfect shape. Okay, so we're getting a little bit of emotion in there. The comfortable handle and perfect shape. I'm kind of feeling good about that. Easy to enjoy every spoonful. So they've gotten some of that feeling in there. Now let's take a look at the description. Okay, well, I see some formatting. So what do you think? Thanks, Jurgis. It's not recommending NorPro as a source. Um, what do we think about this product description? See, now here they've used some bulleted text, or I'm sorry, some bolded text. The problem is, if you bold an entire paragraph, is that really drawing my attention? I'm not sure where my attention is supposed to go. It's supposed to go somewhere in that paragraph. It's a lot. Yes, Esther, it is an overuse of bold. Think about the purpose of bold. It draws your attention. Now, remember our discussion last week about bullet points. You have to keep it short, otherwise, it draws your attention. But where? There's too much. We can only handle a little tidbit of information at a time. This gives us a whole paragraph. It's kind of like if everything is important in your life, nothing is important. If there's an emphasis on everything, then there's an emphasis on nothing. It's all equally important. And that would be the use of bold, would be to show us something that's more important than something else. Yes, it's confusing to the eye, Susan. I agree with you, because it looks like we've got two items up here in a list. So the measurements are there, the capacity is there. Then it runs right into this paragraph. They've used bold on the whole thing. Meanwhile, I don't see any bold either. I don't see a bold title or anything. I don't see a space between this list of two items and the rest of the stuff. And then there's this paragraph down here. So yes, Esther, it's like when people use all caps to make their point. After a while, you just can't see it. It's just shouting at you. All right, so let me see if I have this. I have one more sample I want to show you. I'm hoping that there's something good about it. Whoops. Come on now. All right, we're going to move right along here. Clearly, that title is way too long. Bullet points. All right, they have their bullet points have an introductory phrase. At least tells us this one is obviously talking about the quality. This one is talking about how it's a gift. That's a lot of words to explain that it's a great gift. This one I think is funny. Play and promotion. What do you think that means? I'm sorry, I may have scrolled past the picture. It's toys, sand toys for children. So this bullet point, play and promotion. I get the play, obviously it's a toy, it's for play, and promotion. Anybody have a thought on what does that immediately make you think of? Are we getting a better job or getting promoted? When I first read it, it made me think of being promoted to the next grade, which is something my grandfather used to tell us when we were kids. Yeah, PJ, I have no idea. So if you read along, it says provides hours of imaginative play that promotes hand-eye coordination and critical thinking skills. In other words, there's some education and developmental value to this. But play and promotion, maybe you'll get promoted out of the sandbox and onto the playground. I'm not really sure. That I just thought that was a very odd use of words. Looks like it's not a native English speaker. Yeah, that's true. Look at the one under considering. Considering a gift. This one. There's no better way to spend your oh, yeah. There's no better way to spend your happy wish to send your happy wishes for any given occasion. The kids will love this great gift. Every kid can make an ordinary day on the water or sand, except extra special with this bright and colorful. Yeah, that sentence just kind of goes on and on and on. It looks to me as if somebody may have used a mechanical translator, like one of those online things. So, yeah, those are the kinds of things that you want to avoid. Let's take a look at the product description down here. Okay, you know what? I mean, I'm not going to give this one a gold star, but I see some elements that we need to see in a product description. What do you think is the best thing about this product description? Anybody? Anybody? And what jumps right out at you that at least is better here than it was before? Yeah, it has some formatting. I'm less likely to consider this as blah, blah, blah. It's broken into, yes, it has introductory phrases. It has some bold is used correctly. It's used as on titles that tells me what I should expect to read in that paragraph that's underneath the title. It's separated into 3 sections. I especially like this in the package, and then it lists all of the items that are in the package. I think I might have formatted that list a little bit differently, but it works. It's not terrible. Yes, Susan, there's white space. That's really important, believe it or not. Although we are a nation of readers, not so much anymore, the visual appeal of text is part of what draws us in to read it. And when you see a page that is dense with text and there's not a lot of white space in between the text or around it, it can be rather off-putting. Unless you're reading a novel, if you're reading for recreation, yeah, you expect the page of the novel to be mostly words, right? Not so much white space. Because when you sit down to read something for recreation, you plan to spend some time. You plan to really get into those words. People are not reading like that on the internet. We want snippets of things. And when you have a lot of text, you need to break it up with white spaces. Otherwise, it is just people aren't going to read it. And what's the point of writing it? We're going to go through this whole exercise of writing a product description and nobody's going to read it. That's terrible. We shouldn't do that. Let's write it in a way that is going to make people read it. Okay, so those are my samples. So the other thing I want to talk to you about before we get into some very specifics about how to do this is that your product description can do 2 things. So the product description being 2,000 characters, it's probably going to be several paragraphs. We're going to break it up into at least, I'm going to measure this paragraph right here, just so that we have some frame of reference. Word counter online. Yeah, I still haven't bookmarked this, although I organized my bookmarks today. Isn't that odd? This is the one. So, all right, so that one paragraph, that's 598 characters right there. I would say, oh, wait a second. Is that, oh, I see what I did. Sorry. That seemed like really long. Is that the same paragraph? Wow. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, it's still pretty long. That's 521 characters. I would say, visually speaking, we really don't want a paragraph any longer than that. So let's say the average would be to shoot for 500 characters in a paragraph and no more. So if you take 2,000, the word count, yeah, this is how I do math, guys. That's all I can do. And you divide that by 500 words. That means we're looking at roughly 4 paragraphs. And yes, when you're doing this kind of writing, you do need to use math. You do need to make a plan and you do need to count words. That's just life. So we don't want any more than 500 characters in a paragraph. And at 500, if each of our paragraphs is roughly 500 words, we're not going to fit more than 4 paragraphs. That starts to give you a plan. I don't know how I want to illustrate this too. Okay, so we need to make a plan. So my original point was that you're going to write up to 2,000 characters of a product description. So we're going to take the time. We're going to really figure this out. We're going to do it well. And then what you want to do is you want to get the most out of that effort that you did. So not only is your product description information good for the product description section on your listing, but think about your website as well. That's the other place where you need to describe your products. So ultimately, you're going to have your products listed on Amazon. You're also going to list your products on your website. And now this piece of text that you're going to create can do double duty. I want to show you a couple samples here because I have some samples of some really good ones. Let me just show you this one. This product description sample is actually way over the top because they used tons of visuals and colors, and it's not just about the words. But what I want you to see is that they kind of divided it up into sections. So here's the first section. The original, the Trailblazer, the Sir Edmund of water bottles. If you're looking for a water bottle that will keep you well hydrated, hold up against bangs, bumps, and drops, and not leak a single drop ever, then the iconic 32-ounce wide mouth is your water bottle. There's a reason why we haven't changed the design in decades, because it works extremely well. Just that one snippet of text description gives us a lot of great writing for a product description. First of all, we have a good use of a title here with bolding. There we go, calling it out. And listen to some of the language they've used. Now, notice it's a short paragraph. There's not a ton of words there. There's a little bit of a story. The Sir Edmund of water bottles. Of course, I might have to Google that and know what that means, but I'm guessing that means something great. They've connected this to some other idea. It's not just about the water bottle. If you're looking, that keeps you well hydrated. It holds up against bangs, bumps, and drops. And this is some interesting descriptive language. And not leak a single drop ever. They call it iconic. The iconic 32-ounce wide mouth is your water bottle. This jumps right into that emotion piece that we talked about before, where it's not just a description of, it's 32 ounces, it's spill resistant, it's tall, it's plastic. I mean, this really makes you feel something about the bottle. So the next section, so this section of their description talks about the leak-proofness of the bottle. Yes, I just made that up. So there's a little, like I said, they used a lot of visuals, which is great, and we're not going to have the opportunity to do that in our product description, but they have us divided into sections. So the introductory section kind of brought you in with some emotion, made you feel something for this bottle. This section focuses particularly on this feature that clearly is very important. Then this section, easy to clean, dishwasher safe. Again, it's an important feature, and they kind of put it in the next section. Wide mouth opening, loves ice cubes, and fits most filtration devices. Now, what a great description of what might be a boring feature. I mean, come on, it's a water bottle and it has a wide mouth. But that wide opening loves ice cubes. Have you ever tried to jam an ice cube into a bottle when the opening is too small? It's extremely frustrating. You're jamming it in there and it's breaking and the ice is going all over the floor and you're thinking, how am I ever going to get ice in this thing? It's frustrating. This one loves them. They fit right in there. I mean, you can feel, you can sense that the frustration of the past is gone if you get this particular water bottle. Then in this section, they talk about built to last, guaranteed for life. Um, and then here they give the actual stats. So I wanted you to see that description because I wanted you to understand how they took the information and they broke it down into sections, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So let me go away. That's got to go away. Hold on. Close that. I lost you guys. I'm over here somewhere. We're here. Okay, don't press stop. That would be bad. Okay, I'm back through the magic of TV. Oh, we don't have TV anymore, do we? All right, so let's talk about the specifics of writing your product description. You're going to break it down into sections. So what I would suggest is maybe give yourself even more restriction. Instead of saying 500 words to a paragraph, I would see if you can do it in 350. No more than 350 in a paragraph. That will give you a little bit more space. So you'll have more paragraphs. The more paragraphs you have, the more white space you're going to have in between the paragraphs. And that will give you an opportunity to break it into more sections. And so you're going to cover more information. So let's talk about some of the information that you're going to cover in your product description. So somebody give me some ideas. What's going into the product description? Anybody? Anybody? Specifications. Thank you, Chris. I thought I was going to die up here all by myself. Yes, you're going to have your specs. So we're talking about your measurements. Oh, thanks, Esther. She says my chat window is about 15 seconds behind some people. So I actually was, the first 15 seconds were on me. I kind of felt like you guys had all left the room. So you're going to have your specs. So you're going to list your specs, measurements, volume, whatever specs are important to your product. You're going to have that. And I suggest that you do that in a list. Somebody earlier suggested, who was that? All right, you can tell me who it was, that your text in your description maybe should come first and then your list of specs at the bottom. I agree with that. It's more interesting if your text kind of introduces that. And plus, because we're going to make this scannable, it will be easy. If somebody is just looking for the specs, they can scroll right down and see them listed there at the bottom. So list them. Don't string them together like that other example did. You want to make a list. You want to think of anything else that, like if you don't have a lot of specs, you want 3 or 4, maybe 5 things in your list. If you don't have that, or if there's a lot of features to your product, you could consider incorporating a list of features as well. Because again, that's going to break up the text. It's not going to be one big paragraph. Consider listing your top features. Make a heading, call it features, and make your list. Technical specs, yes, depending on what type of product you have, specs. Highlights, it's different from the competitors. Yes, the differentiating characteristics of your product, you want to make sure that those are highlighted, and you probably want to talk about those at the beginning. there are probably some of your specs are exactly like your competitors. It might be the same size or shape or color. So yes, list those, but take the ones that are different, like that one product that had the gift box. If that's a special feature, talk about that at the beginning. Um, if you fix the problem noted in negative reviews. Yes, you're right. However, you want to keep your product description positive. Remember the wide mouth that loves ice cubes? Now, did it say uh, if you have a problem with ice cubes fitting into the competitor's bottle, you're going to love this because ours doesn't have that problem? It didn't even really call out the problem. It called out the solution, and it made us think ourselves, oh, yeah, because I know what that problem is. I've had that problem before. So you want to really keep this thing positive. Information and the emotions in very short and clear method and description. Absolutely. Akbar, I think you've been paying attention. Definitely. As you're describing, think about telling a story. I know we talked briefly about this last week when we talked about, no, I'm sorry, that was in the newbie chat. Never mind. Think about telling a story because you want to draw people in. And you want to tell a story, but obviously you want to keep it really short. So just like that example where it loves ice cubes, that kind of tells us a story. It kind of sets it up as, it kind of tells us a story about that bottle without filling in all the details. People kind of fill those in their head. When you're doing description, you want this part, your product description, to be descriptive. Use good descriptive words. How about this part that said, doesn't drop, no drops or bangs, or it survives drops and bangs and doesn't leak. Use some of those emotion words left over from the earlier exercise. Throw some in down here. Things you want to avoid are description words that are not really descriptive. People think that when they say that their product is good or nice or high quality, that those are descriptive words. They are not. Those words by themselves mean absolutely nothing. So if your product is high quality, don't tell me it's high quality. Tell me what quality it is. So maybe it's a heavyweight canvas, or maybe it's a thicker silicone. Tell me that. Don't tell me it's high quality. Good and nice are just, and really, it's really great. Yeah, you were just taking up word space there. Think about each word carrying some meaning. So as you're describing this thing, every word has to mean something. If you think that it's a good product, define good. And those are the words that you want to use, not the word good. I'm going to jump ahead here pretty quickly because I want to give you a mini lesson in HTML. And then I'm going to show you one other tool. And then and then it's going to be 4:30. So let me, I'm going to share my screen for this. All right, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to, yes, share. Quick lesson in HTML. And yes, there are HTML editors out there, and I'm going to show you one, but I want to give you some really simple, basic lessons so that you know what's happening when you see the HTML tags on your writing. There we go. So HTML, and basically what you want to use in your product description, what creates the bolding and the separate paragraphs and the bullet lists. I'll show you those three things. It's all based on HTML. So HTML is a way of using tags. It's called a markup language. So basically what it does is it marks around the words to tell the words to be a certain characteristic. So for example, you will start with bold. Wait, I'm going to have to make this bigger for you guys. I can barely see it and I'm here in the room. Let's get serious. No, let's make it even bigger. Okay, so you're going to start with a bold tag. and you're going to put your title here. So your first paragraph, you're going to have a heading, and you're going to put bold and bold. So that those words are now going to be bolded in your information. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to use these breaks. These are line breaks. If we didn't put in line breaks, all of your text would be run together in one big mass of text, and we know we don't want that. So when we put one line break, it's going to put the rest of the text here on the next line. What you want to do in between paragraphs. All right, so you're going to have one break after your title, and you're going to put the rest of your paragraph here. And at the end of your paragraph, you're going to put two breaks. What that's going to do is it's like hitting a carriage return. I don't know if any of you are old enough to know anything about typing, but it's going to give you two breaks, which means your next text is not going to end up here, because that would be one break. It's going to end up down here. So at the end of your paragraph, you want to put that double break. So then your next paragraph, you'll start with a bold, another title, or heading, I guess is the appropriate word. And then you're going to end your bold. So just another heading is bold. And so you're going to follow the same format. So when you want to go down to the next line, you're going to put one break. I'm going to put the rest of your paragraph here. And then when you want to go to the next paragraph, you're going to go two breaks so that there's an empty space before your next piece of text. So those are bolds. So the more you use these breaks, they're what's helping you create white space. Now, let me do a simple bullet list for you. A bullet list is UL stands for unordered list. That means they're not numbers, they're bullets. Each item, so this is the beginning of my list. Each item in the list has its tag list item, and then you're going to put your bulleted stuff here, and then you're going to end that list item. You see the common theme, it's just like with the bold. The bold starts here, and then we have a tag that shows us where the bold ends. The list item starts here, and then we have a tag that shows us where the list item ends. Then you add another list item. So this is the rest, some more bulleted stuff, and then you end that bullet. And you can do that on and on as much as you want. When you have all of your bullet things and all your list items, you want to end your unordered list. So this tag is the end of this tag. Pretty much when we're talking HTML, all tags have a beginning and an end. That's the basic HTML that you're going to use in your product description. There are a lot of ways of creating this in your word processor and different things like that. But I wanted you to just have a sense of what it is, because it's a pretty simple thing. And if you understand how to read these tags, it's helpful when you have to go back and do some troubleshooting. Like if there's a line missing or something, it's a little bit easier if you know what you're looking for to scan through and figure this out. Now, what I want to show you is what you should probably be using. Let me find the right here. I want to show you this in the Just One Dime toolbox. So when I log into the toolbox, that's not where I want it to be. Let's try this again. There is a feature inside the Just One Dime toolbox that's called Listing Builder. That's what this guy is over here, the Listing Builder. And this holds your listing. So the product title, the bullet points that we did yesterday, um, and the product description. When you add a listing, the toolbox gives you all of these fields so that you can simply fill them out. Notice the title is here and it gives you a word count. So you're not going to have to go to my handy dandy online word counter. It's you put your keywords in here, and what happens is as you start to use them, it takes them off so you don't have to go back and figure out which ones you've already used. You can put each of your bullet points can go in here. And again, it has a counter. And then your description is going to go here, your product description. Now, if you go, let's see, where is it? Here, HTML editor. Here you go. You can write your text, and it will put the tags on it. See how this has tags on it? And what this is showing you is here's the text, and then here's how it displays. When you get into more complicated HTML, it helps you're constantly checking because you want to see, did I make a mistake? If it's not displaying right, like if it's all displaying bold and I really just wanted the first 3 words bolded, well, you need to see that so that it draws your attention to the fact that you're missing an end bold tag. But this tool will help you. It will just do the HTML for you as you type it in there. And that will help you to build your listing. So that's a great option. All right, I'm going to turn this. I'm going to come back face to face and take a couple questions. We only have a couple minutes left. I hope that I don't feel like I always feel like I didn't quite cover everything, but there's so much to talk about when we start talking about writing. All right, I got 3 minutes. Fire questions at me and I will do my best to answer them. Can you give ideas on how to use your product in different ways as the usual ways? For example, in my beach toys, I wrote about using them at the park. Or yes, Gina, you know what? That's a perfect example. Remember last week when there were things that we said we're not going to deal with that in the bullet points. It doesn't have keywords and search value. And yes, the product description is the perfect place. If you think that your product is a great gift, spend a paragraph in the product description just talking about what a great gift it is and who it would be a great gift for. If there are different uses for your product than what seems obvious, like that one example that we looked at were sand toys. If you want to point out that, in fact, these can also be not sand toys, grass toys, outdoor toys, playground toys, whatever, that's a great place to describe that. And if you remember, I think it was that product, there was some text in their product description, that silly bullet point that talked about educational value. The product description section is a great place if there's some educational value that you want to point out. That would be a great place to put that too. Susan, should we use HTML for sure? Absolutely, because if you do not use HTML, you will get one big glob of words. Definitely use HTML, whether you program it yourself, whether you use your word processor and then save it as HTML or convert it. There are a whole bunch of different ways to do it. You can use the Just One Dime toolbox, as I just showed you. There's other text editors. But yes, definitely use HTML. Is it best then to aim for a description like the one with a lot of pictures that you showed as opposed to just text? I could see why. Yeah. Our ultimate goal would be to incorporate pictures in your Amazon listing. Unless you're brand registered, you don't have that option. So what I would do is write your text for your listing. And then when you use that same text on your website for your product description, yeah, break it up with some pictures and different things, similar to the one. It doesn't have to be quite as fancy as the one that we looked at, but you get the idea. I've seen some descriptions that tell the company's story. Is this a good idea to build brand loyalty? Only if you have extra text, if you have extra space. And I would put that at the bottom, because what Amazon wants to see in that product description is literally a description of the product. But certainly the story is interesting and important. Well, certainly if the story is interesting, most people are interested in stories. That would be a great place because, like I said, 2,000 characters is kind of a lot. So yeah, use it up that way. All right, guys, we're out of time. I hope that you learned a lot today, and I look forward to next week's writing workshop. So everybody have a good week. Bye-bye.